Hello everybody and welcome back to Operation Logistics, where I think some of our problems might have to do with our spawn road equals false. At this point we basically want it to always spawn road if we have a road there. So let's go ahead and set this to spawn road equals true, and let's get rid of all of our spawn roads equals true down this direction. Now that they are kind of redundant, because if it's a road, we definitely want to spawn the road. If it's an intersection, we also want to spawn the road. If it is not, well then, we just don't want to spawn anything. Which is theoretically what should be happening there right now. So I think now we should see placeholders. Theoretically. Hey, look at that. No placeholders. Because it's getting too many of the type. Okay. So maybe we need to completely rework the way we're doing this. I mean, hypothetically, what happens if I did completely rework this? So we need to know, we've got multiple types of roads that we can spawn. The road intersections, I think, is fine for right now. But hypothetically, let's just go ahead and real quick, I want to just comment all of this out because we now know largely how we're going to do this. So let's have spawn road equals true be out here. But then we're going to comment out all of this. That said, some of this we actually do need still. So let's go ahead and bring our comment from here down to here. Okay. What don't we know about? Oh, I think I have... Let's see, this is... here. Hang on a moment. What is happening here? What is this connected to? This is connected to... equals buildings.road. Hang on. Let me undo all of that. Okay. Is that still connected to buildings.road? No. No, it is not. Okay. So realistically, we want to be commenting here down to, theoretically, here. Yes. That is exactly where we want to be. Okay. I just did it wrong before. So let's go ahead and move this down to here then. Because we do need to know this information. Okay. There we go. So we now need to know what type of things to spawn. And I think what we should do is basically get rid of this here. And we should be checking for certain things. That is to say, we should be checking to see if we are... What type of road is this? We know it's not an intersection, so we know this isn't an intersection. What else do we know? We need to know whether this is straight, whether, well, straight, a corner, or a sharp corner. Okay, so how do we determine if it's straight, a corner, or a sharp corner? Well, there might actually be a slightly easier way to do this. So if it's a sharp corner, the distance will be quite small, right? Because we know that it will always be, if we're using the subhexes here, if it compiles. Come on. No, go back. There we go. Okay, if we're using the subhexes here, if it's a sharp corner, if we're here, we know that it will always be this one and this one, 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 or this one and this one. And the distance between those is much shorter than it always is otherwise. Now, what is that distance? That distance is the standard distance of one hex, which is, we know, 0.0866. So, I think we can go ahead and say if next position dot, actually just next position minus previous position is less than, we'll just say 1 for right now. And this needs to be dot square magnitude. Now this is squared, so we don't actually know if it's less than 1. We need to know if it's less than 1 squared. So 1 times 1, which is 1. Oh, fun with squaring. So we can actually get rid of that. It's exactly the same thing. So if that's the case, then we know it's a straight corner, or a sharp corner, right? So we can go ahead and do something along the lines of this. That said, we don't necessarily know the rotation. So I'm going to comment out the rotation again. But we know it's a sharp corner. Theoretically. Maybe. Oh. Road placeholder has not been assigned. Okay. Yeah, that's to be expected, actually. So let's go ahead and go into our sub-subhexes. We should have run into that earlier. No wonder it wasn't spawning them, but it should have been. Okay. Sub-subhexes. There we go. So now we've got a lot of sharp corners that shouldn't necessarily be sharp. Because 1 is way too much. So we'll go for 0.1, except it should be 0.01, I believe. Scale of 1, scale of 0.1, and then these are also 0.1. So I believe it should be a scale of 0.01f for the sharp corners. Okay. Well, that's still way too many sharp corners. That said, some of these should be sharp corners. But many of them should not be. So let's go for 0.866. And let's say less than or equal to 0.0866. And actually, let's round it to 0.867, so that way we know it's exactly 1 hex apart. Okay, not even that cut down on the number of them. Like, for example, this definitely should not be triggering that. Let's just find out how far they are, shall we? Debug.log, and then let's debug.log this here. And of course, this is square magnitude, so times 0.0867. That's probably what's doing it, actually. This is going to be a much smaller number because it's squared. I bet that's it. Let's see. Okay. Well, that's better. Certainly better. Okay, let's still debug log this. Debug.log, and let's see what our average distances are. We should see 3 types of distances, theoretically. 3 or 4. Okay. Let's go. Okay. So, I mean, we've got some floating point errors, but 0.0009... What is this? 1353.782? That shouldn't be a thing. I mean, realistically, we should be seeing exactly 3 different numbers here. And then some floating point errors. But, we're not. Next position minus previous position. I mean, we could flip it around. Not sure it'll really do anything. Yeah. As long as it's... .0... Maybe it needs to be .00867? We'll find out. Okay, that's looking a bit more like it. Although this one clearly should be a sharp corner. And yeah, it's just not coming out with any sharp corners whatsoever. Okay. Well, I was hopeful that this would work, but it doesn't seem to be working at all. Okay, yeah, that's a big part of it there. We need to be saying up here, if next position is not equal to vector 3.0 and previous position is also not equal to vector 3.0. That'll help us a lot. And we'll just go ahead and put all of this inside of that. So if it is, then it's an end position, and we don't need to be worrying about that. That'll cut down on these wacky numbers. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, that certainly cut down on the wacky numbers that I really wasn't expecting. Okay, so now let's try removing 1, 0 here and see what happens there. We'll see. So, I'm noticing a interesting thing here, and that's this tile right here. Now, some of these sharp corners are actually correct. Like this one here, that is correct. Because I'm assuming this road goes like that, or something. However, I do want to know what the actual distance is here. Like, realistically, what are the distances that we're working with here? So, this is local. Let's go ahead and bring this up here to be global distances. This is on the z-axis for reasons. But yeah, it looks like the distance here is definitely 7.54 to 7.52. So about 0.02. It's an interesting distance. 0.0002. It might be that 0.0003 that we're looking at there. So let's go ahead and check that. 0.0003. 3 O's? Yes, 3 zeros. I don't know why it would be that, but whatever. We'll check it. Okay. That actually seems right. And then we've got the 00089, so we'll say that's 0.09. So if... And actually, we don't need double parentheses here. What am I talking about? if next position minus previous position dot square magnitude is less than or equal to 0.0009. Actually, this should be a floating point number. Oh, we need this here. There we go. Road equals, and this should be, I think, road corner. Let's find out. So let's go in here. And I think that's working correctly. And then we would say something along the lines of, this would be an else if, and then down here, else road equals road prefab. And then we just need to do rotations, which we can go ahead and get rid of this. I think that's working correctly. Oh, we still do have a few placeholders here. Okay. I think... well, that should be a straight there. Why do we still have a placeholder there, though? That's the question. Because one of them is an edge position. I think. Let's check that again. Yeah, all of these are next to edge positions. Oh, my. Not all of these are. That's kind of exciting. That is definitely kind of exciting. Okay, so realistically speaking, this one should be a sharp corner. This one is a sharp corner correctly. However, if it's a road, and next position and previous position are not equal to 0. Previous position and next position. Because it should be equal to a road prefab as long as these are not equal to 0. So I'm just trying to check here to find out why these are equaling 0 in weird places. I'm wondering if it has to do with improper clearing of the road, because I noticed the first one I went to is only next to entry points. And then I go to the next ones and suddenly it's all over. Is that true all the time? Yes, that seems to always be true. Okay. So if that's always true, then what aren't we clearing? So we've got our manager, we've got our neighbors, those don't need to be cleared. We've got our on-road and our intersections. That goes back to 0. Yeah, those are all being cleared. And then the building is intersection, that's being cleared. Yeah, I don't know. That's a little odd, to be sure. And then we are seeing a few other things going on here, but I'm reasonably certain that it's because of this. So what we need to do is, I think we need to do... we already know it's not a road entry. So theoretically, this should never happen, right? It should never be at vector 3.0. Because we already did the entries. We did them up here. If road entries.contain subhexes I, then we go ahead and do that. So, with that being the case, the question then becomes, why are some of these actually still at vector 3.0? If index minus 1 is less than 0 previous, this shouldn't ever actually be the case. So theoretically, we should be fine to comment out all of this, right? Because we're already doing the entryways. Will this cause errors? It does indeed. Argument is out of range. Sub-hex manager 223. 223. That's a blank line. Are you sure about that? 233. That's more like it. Okay. Line 233. Previous hex equals our road index minus 1. So, yeah. This is being called on non-entry roads. If road entries.contain subhexes.I, then we go through and do this. Otherwise, we go through and do this. But it should be fine to get rid of these. Theoretically, because we should be able to guaranteed do this. Our road.index of subhexes I. This is in an else from this if. So if it's a road entry, it should never be, this should never be called. So why is it being called? Now I'm very confused. Index minus 1, if our index is 1, it should be 0. Theoretically, anyway. We get our index of the subhex. We get the previous hex. Actually, we can just go ahead and move this up here, combine this all together. Set this here. And then set our next hex here. Because theoretically, this should never be in a position and this is previous position, so previous hex. And this should be next hex. Let's go ahead and debug.log index right here. I want to know what index we're actually at here. Because if it's calling it at index 0, or if it's calling it at index whatever the max is, it shouldn't be. And yeah, it called it at index 0. Why is it calling it at index 0? Because it goes through all of the subhexes, and then if it's a road entry, we do it here. Else, we do it here. So I guess we need to redo this a little bit. If subhexes I.building equals buildings.road, then what we need to do is we need to go ahead and say something along the lines of if index equals 0 or index equals our road.count. Now I believe we might need to do a -1 here. But yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So this would then be something like this. Copy this into here. Completely get rid of this. We would spawn our road entries here then. Theoretically. And then we would say else we would do this. So it should never, ever, ever call it if it's in a position where this would fail. At least theoretically. Maybe. We'll find out. It's probably still going to fail. But we'll see. Indeed it did. Argument is out of range. Line 226. Line 226. Right here. It's failing at the previous hex, our road index -1. If index equals 0, then it's supposed to do this. Like, it never... debug.log index. If it outputs 0, it's doing something horribly, horribly wrong. And it probably will. -1? What? I'm so confused. Why did it output -1? Okay, first things first. Let's clean this up a little bit, because we do not need this anymore, for now anyway. Okay. -1. So it comes out with 5, 6, 3, 2, 5, -1. Which means it's not on the road for our road. It's not on a road at all. Which would mean it shouldn't be set to buildings.road, right? Like, why would it output -1 here? Line 227, which is right here. Index well, there's a second semicolon there for one thing. But that's not going to cause this issue. I don't know, but I'm going to change this to 005 for now, and this to 001. Hang on, 0005, I think, is what I need up here. Yeah, 0005, and this to 001, to kind of do any floating point sort of nonsense. Okay, so I do need to put a cut in here. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode we're going to try to figure out why it's calling this on index -1. See you all then.